Whispers on the Bridge, Part 1. The bridge is 800 feet long, an old iron monster stretching over a nameless river that barely trickles in the dry months. Locals whisper that it was built too fast, with shortcuts that compromised its safety, and some claim to hear strange echoes when the wind blows through its rusted beams, whispers that sound like voices, calling names that no one recognizes. The river beneath, shallow and sluggish, was once the lifeblood of the area, but now it feels like a graveyard for forgotten things. I was hired to guard it 6 months ago, after a string of petty vandalism and one notable suicide. The job was simple: sit in the small booth at the base of the bridge, keep a log of vehicles and pedestrians crossing, and call the local sheriff if anything suspicious happened. For $15 an hour and all the coffee I could drink, I figured I couldn't complain. The booth was a relic of the 1960s, with faded yellow walls and a dusty desk covered in graffiti etched by past guards. Most of it was mundane: names, dates, and crude drawings, but one phrase near the corner of the desk caught my eye: "They watch from below." The words were scratched deep, almost as if the writer had been desperate to make them permanent. I passed the time scrolling on my phone, reading crime novels, or listening to the occasional trucker complain about potholes. Most nights were quiet, save for the occasional raccoon rattling a trash can. The air had felt strange that entire week, too still, almost expectant. Birds had stopped gathering near the river, their usual chatter replaced by an eerie silence. That changed last Tuesday. The fog rolled in around midnight, thick and white as cotton. It carried a faint metallic tang, sharp and unpleasant, that clung to the back of my throat. Sounds from the river below seemed to warp and echo strangely, as though the water were murmuring secrets just beyond understanding. The temperature dropped sharply, the damp air chilling me to the bone despite the booth's flimsy heater. It wasn't unusual for the river to mist over, but this fog was different. It crept in fast, swallowing the bridge in minutes. Even the booth's weak overhead lamp barely cut through the murk. I radioed the county weather service, but they just chalked it up to a sudden temperature drop. "Nothing to worry about," the voice on the other end assured me. "It'll burn off by morning." But it didn't. The fog stayed. By 2 a.m., I couldn't see more than a few feet beyond the glass. Sounds became muted, as if the world beyond the booth had been swallowed entirely. Even the hum of the bridge itself, a faint vibration I'd grown used to, had vanished. The air inside the booth grew clammy, the chill seeping through the walls and settling in my bones. Even the bridge's faint hum of passing cars disappeared. The air felt wrong, heavy in a way I couldn't describe. I thought about leaving early, but the booth's logbook kept me anchored. We're supposed to record everything: every car, every walker, every stray dog. It's protocol. And so, I sat there, pen in hand, waiting for something to log. That's why I saw the first figure. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, a trick of the fog. Its edges seemed to shimmer unnaturally, bending and shifting as if the figure wasn't entirely solid. The sight made my stomach churn, and a wave of dizziness washed over me, as though reality itself had warped in its presence. My pulse quickened, and an icy dread crept through me, leaving my limbs weak and trembling. But then it moved, with a jerky, unnatural gait that made my skin crawl. A man stepped into the faint circle of light outside the booth. He wore a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat, and he carried a large duffel bag slung over one shoulder. His movements were deliberate yet oddly stiff, as though he were unused to his own body. The air around him seemed colder, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, and an unnatural stillness followed in his wake. His face was turned down, obscured by the brim of his hat, but something about him felt off. He didn't wave or call out. He just stood there, motionless. I opened the window. "Hey. You all right?" No response. "Bridge is closed," I tried again. It wasn't true, but I figured it might send him on his way. Still nothing. He just stared, or at least I think he stared. The fog warped everything, but I could feel his gaze. It burned through the glass, cold and unnerving. I reached for the radio, but as soon as my hand touched it, the man turned and started walking onto the bridge. "Sir, wait!" I yelled, stepping out of the booth. The bridge creaked under his weight as he crossed. His duffel bag swayed with each step, and the sound of it scraping against the iron rails set my teeth on edge. I'd never seen anyone walk the bridge at night. It's not illegal, but it's damn stupid. The guardrails are rusted, and the drop to the river is over 200 feet. I followed him, keeping a safe distance. "Sir, it's dangerous out here," I called. He didn't turn. The fog swallowed his silhouette, leaving only the faint crunch of his boots on the gravel walkway. Then, halfway across the bridge, he stopped. He bent down, set the duffel bag on the ground, and unzipped it. Something would hit the pavement. My stomach twisted. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, my voice cracking. The man stood slowly and turned to face me. I couldn't make out his features, but his posture was wrong, twisted. He raised one hand and waved, a slow, deliberate gesture. Then he stepped over the guardrail. My heart leapt into my throat as I froze in place, my breath catching painfully. For a moment, it felt like time itself had stalled, the weight of his deliberate action pressing down on me like a physical force. My legs finally obeyed, and I surged forward, shouting into the fog, but the empty, echoing silence that followed made my chest tighten with dread. I broke into a sprint, but by the time I reached the spot, he was gone. The duffel bag lay open on the ground. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to walk away, but curiosity won. I crouched and peered inside. It was full of shoes. Hundreds of them, all mismatched and worn, piled like discarded memories. Sneakers with frayed laces, scuffed dress shoes, mud-caked boots, and even delicate heels with broken straps. They smelled of salt and mildew, and some were streaked with mud, others with something darker. Hundreds of them, all mismatched and worn, piled like discarded memories. They smelled of salt and mildew, and some were streaked with mud, others with something darker. The sound of creaking metal drew my attention back to the guardrail. I leaned over cautiously, peering into the foggy abyss. The river below was invisible, but I could hear it gurgling faintly. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A hand. Pale, bony fingers clutched the edge of the bridge, pulling upward with an agonizing slowness. The nails scraped against the metal with a grating screech, sending chills racing down my spine. The hand twitched unnaturally, as if testing its grip, before another hand joined it, both moving in a grotesque, insect-like rhythm. Another hand followed, and then a face. It wasn't the man, it wasn't anyone. It was a mass of features that didn't belong together, too many eyes, too many mouths, all moving independently. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. The thing climbed onto the bridge with impossible grace, standing on legs that bent the wrong way. It turned its many gazes toward me and smiled with every mouth. Then it spoke. More soon, it whispered, in a voice that sounded like breaking glass. My chest tightened as though the air had been sucked out of the world. I stumbled backward, my legs weak and trembling, and a sharp, icy sensation prickled up my spine. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't look away from the thing's twisting, impossible form. My hands shook as I fumbled for the flashlight at my side, its feeble beam doing little to banish the oppressive darkness. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back in the booth, slamming the door behind me. The fog pressed against the windows like a living thing, and for the first time, I prayed for dawn. But dawn didn't come.